Okay, so let's take a look at Old St. Peter's here. And of course, this building, because it was torn down to make way for the new St. Peter's during the Renaissance, so in the kind of late 1400s, early 1500s, what we're looking at are paintings, something like what we see on the right. We're looking at a plan above on the left, so that's the image of the building seen from above. And then a three-dimensional kind of recreation here of the building. And this church had many different functions. It held regular services. It was also, though, a center that welcomed many pilgrims. Pilgrims are people on a religious religious journey. So people who have traveled a long way to Rome to go visit this holy site, that is the place where St. Peter was believed to be martyred on the Vatican Hill outside of the Roman city walls. And this is the Vatican, this is the seat of the Catholic Church today. So a lot of different people are coming in and out of this building. And so you need a space that's going to accommodate all of this traffic. Look at the floor plan. You see this big, wide open space in the center here, long rectangular space. This is not the cella, that is only for Greek architecture, but here this is what's called the nave, N-A-V-E. The nave is this large hall, and this particular nave has side aisles on either side of it. So actually two side aisles on either end, again, to help that flow of pilgrims and monks and nuns and other visitors, different masses going on at once. On the far side of the church, here on the plan and then here in the back of that image, we see what's called a transept. It's that arm that sticks out beyond the nave here. And you can see two little mini rooms on either end, places where altars could be set up, smaller masses could be said. And then in the east end here, we have what's called an apse. An apse in a church, this is what we have in the painting here. This is typically where the high altar, the most important altar of a church, would stand for the performance of services. Now, in an era without electricity, the architects here have raised the center piece of the roof here. So not the roof over the side aisles, but raised the middle part over the transept and the nave, and then put windows here on that raised part of the walls to illuminate the interior. And that raised row of windows is called a clerestory. And it is a clerestory that takes on really spectacular dimensions as we trace the development of Christian architecture from the early days in the Roman Empire to something in the Middle Ages here. This is Chartres Cathedral, the Cathedral of Our Lady, built at the high point of the late medieval style that is called Gothic, G-O-T-H-I-C. And let's take a look at what happens to that simple clerestory in Old St. Peter's. By the time we get to a church like Chartres in the 1100s, in the 12th century, we see the walls have been extended even further up, and that clerestory now really takes up almost half of the wall. So we have this lower level here of a row of columns, a peristyle. We have this little kind of gallery here in between, and then look, all of the stained glass windows, these huge windows here, that is all the clerestory that soars above the nave. Imagine being a poor peasant farmer in medieval France. You are living in a one-room shack with your entire family. Your life expectancy is 40 if you're lucky, and you are barely eking out enough in your fields to pay off the local duke or lord, pay your taxes, and give your family enough food. You walk in to a building like this that is full of light pouring in from the clerestory, all of that colored stained glass. You are transported out of the mucky muck, hand-to-mouth existence of your daily life, and it feels as if you have landed in heaven. This is exactly the goal of a sacred space like this, to really make the visitor feel transported, make the visitor feel as if they have entered an otherworldly realm. And it's not just the clerestory that's accomplishing that, but look at the architecture itself. And maybe let's go back here a second. Look at how complicated this plan looks. I'm going to explain what all those lines mean, but here we see that same basic shape of St. Peter's with a nave, and then a transept arm, and then an apse. And notice that that forms a cross. So there's already religious symbolism in the floor plan of a cathedral, that it mimics a cross being where Jesus was crucified by the Romans, and therefore dying to save humanity. And so the symbolism is embedded in the architecture. And if we go back here on the inside, we see how these big, massive columns, they support this huge roof structure, these big vaults. This might remind you of the Pantheon, that big open interior space. And you might wonder, well, okay, this has to be built out of concrete then, just like the Pantheon, in order to support this kind of big open interior that is so soaring, so airy. But this is actually made of stone. All of these vaults here, this vaulted ceiling, is made of stone. And it is a feature on the outside that helps support it. And we see that here. These are called, this is a fantastic term, this is a flying buttress. So a buttress is a supportive architectural element. But it's flying because, look, it has these almost little wing structures here so that the buttress itself does not impede on the influx of light. And those flying buttresses make all of that soaring verticality possible. Don't worry about this chart. I know you can't read it. I'm staring at my screen right now and I can barely read it. But I love this photo of some of the stained glass windows. In particular, this is called a rose window because it looks like a blossoming rose. And you can see the amazing effect that these stained glass windows have in Chartres. Chartres is one of the few Gothic cathedrals from the Middle Ages where its stained glass windows have survived. These are stained glass windows from the 1200s, and they have miraculously survived wars and invasions through the centuries. And all of those rich blues and reds, again, think about being that medieval peasant farmer and how inspiring this site would be. Here again, another stained glass window. A few more. I love these photographs of them where you really, the architecture is impressive on its own, but here you can really see that full effect of light and color within the architecture itself. And it's not just the interior that is of the architecture that's completely adorned, but it's also the exterior as well. Here we see one of the main entrances to Chartres, and these three doors here side by side, they each include a portal above with these big carved panels. This is a great example of relief sculpture. It's not freestanding, it's not carved in the round, and we see important images of angels, saints, Jesus here sitting enthroned above the main door, all working together to transport the viewer and to impart some key ideas from the religion onto the viewer as well. The floor of Chartres includes another sacred experience for the visitor. You can see inlaid, the marble floor, the inlay here creates a labyrinth. And walking this labyrinth is a form of kind of walking meditation or a walking prayer. And we see that Chartres here really becomes a kind of, this is not a spectator sport. This is a multi-sensory experience as well that really engages the visitor. We don't have to worry about this because you guys are writing your own sample exam questions. We're going to pause the video here and then I will come back and we will transition to Islam and Islamic architecture.